Okay, welcome back to another episode of About That Track. We are going to start off with the second track on the album, The Very Best of Ricky and Jane. Ricky being Derek, my father, Jane being Jane, my mother. And I wanted to preface this with just my appreciation for you being here. Like, thank you so much for being here and actually watching these videos on About That Track. And I just have a lot of gratitude for it. So thank you so much. So this is a very short track. It's an interlude, and I'm gonna tiptoe with this because this one is really, really touchy. This one is not an easy one to talk about, but I will do my best to be respectful to the people that are being referenced in this track. So here we go. There it goes.
I think I was 5, maybe it was 7.
Okay, I think I was 5, maybe it was 7. Now, the first thing you hear is this piano, this do, blah, blah, blah. I know this is a very subtle track, but this is the explanation of this is very heavy for me, if I haven't prefaced that enough already. Jake, Dr. Wiley, was creating this very Amelie track. It went, and it reminded me of a level in Super Castlevania where you have to basically go through this ballroom. It's terrifying playing it as a kid. And the end boss are this couple, and they're ghosts. Everything is a ghost in this damn place. I think there might be some like actual tangible monsters, but everything is a damn ghost. And the final bosses are this couple that are, you know, going back and forth, and then they would spin, and they would both grab hands and like produce a sword and go like, you know, like you'd have to dodge it, and you end up killing the ghost couple. I don't know where they go from there, but this track reminded me of that, and so we decided to use it as an interlude because didn't really know what to do with it as an actual track. Maybe it'll come in on another album. Who knows? But here we go. I think I was 5, maybe I was 7, and then
I was 5, 6, or 7.
5, 6, or 7.
We were arguing back and forth, and you know, I'm this little kid and mouthing off. And all of a sudden, she turned to me and she said, "You know, you sound just like your father right now."
Now this is me citing a argument I was having with my mother when I was basically a child. I'll get into this in a little bit because this is a very this is not easy to okay, let's listen and rest.
I was taken aback because I didn't really understand what that meant. It was just an odd thing to say. But looking back on it now,
she said you sound just like your father.
Honestly, I don't think there could have been a higher compliment anybody could have ever given to me.
Okay. So that takes us to Carol May. So I'm very vague on the album with it, clearly not in this video with you. But I say, you know, I was 5, 6 or 7, and she said to me, "You sound just like your father right now." And I was taken aback because I was like, oh. And I then later on, you know, come to this conclusion that there couldn't have been a higher compliment ever given to me. And to give you the backdrop, my mom and dad split when I was 4. We lived in New Orleans. I was born in New Orleans. My sister was born in New Orleans. And my mom and dad split when I was 4. And then it was a very abrupt geographical change. So it was like, woke up one morning in New Orleans, went to bed someplace in Ohio, somewhere halfway between here, Minnesota, and New Orleans, and then was in Minnesota sooner or later, and I think it was winter, can't quite remember, but it happened. And so with that happening, with divorce, and I'll dive into this, is that the kids usually at that age, it is really hard to understand what's going on. At least it was for me, from my personal experience. And I didn't really have even a firm grasp on what the hell was going on. I had some idea, but it just divorce didn't make any sense to me, or leaving without saying goodbye didn't make any sense to me. And that's just my experience. And so I really couldn't put two and two together. So when my mother and I, you know, had arguments, and when she said something like, "You sound just like your father right now," I'm like, well, I knew the guy for like 4 years. Like, what do you mean I sound just like him? Like, barely even know the guy. You know, he's in New Orleans. You know, we visit him once a year, or he visits us once a year. And in divorce, the tough part about it is that it can be amicable. In my situation, it was not. And it can be peaceful. In my situation, it was not. It can be still loving with compassion. In my situation, that was very hard to find that in that situation. And my dad, in that transaction, got the brunt of a lot of kind of character, you know, assassination, for the lack of a better term of it. And, you know, if you spend time with one side of the coin, you're going to be told what the other side is like without experiencing it. And after I was able to go to New Orleans a fair amount of times and really connect with my father as an adult in a very just non-judgmental or just no expectation type of way, I learned that the guy is pretty fucking awesome. Like, he saw Malcolm X, the speech before Malcolm X was assassinated, the final speech. He wrote for The Militant and documented the Black Panthers. He was in New York in the 60s, New York City, like without a car, chilling, doing activism. He was born in Detroit, and there's just so many cool things about my dad, and he's doing the best he can. And honestly, getting to know him better, he's one of my heroes, you know, just like my mom. And so that track is a hearkening back to that moment. And I think in any album, to really go deep into what the actual subject matter is or what you're writing, you're gonna have to go deep into who you are and your origins and your roots and what makes you and how this all came to be, how all this came to be, and who are you. And I think a lot of us, I wrote this one line in a slam poem. I was working with a kid whose parents had just divorced, and he was around the same age that my parents were divorced. And he said, and in the poem I write, "We were locked in a high chair, forced to watch our makers separate. We didn't watch the house burn, we caught fire with it." It's something to that extent, but it's like when you watch your actual parents separate, that is something extremely impactful. And you can't really separate that from your consciousness unless you dissociate it, but I didn't. And it's part of the album because it is part of me and my story. And I think learning about your parents or where you come from, or, you know, kind of what you're made of, is really important. And for me, it was important to put it into the album and tell stories that poetically, you know, weren't detailed and, you know, telling you exactly what was going on, but just speaking from a place that is very near and dear to me. And also, get this, we'll round up this video with this, speaking to a child version of me and telling that 5, 6, or 7-year-old version of Toussaint that it's okay. You're gonna be all right. So yeah, that's that. How is that for an About That track? For an interlude, I didn't even know I was going to do interludes for this, but here we are. Thanks so much for watching. If you're a patron, my goodness, thank you so much for being a patron, and we will see you in the next video. Okay, bye.